I just think a lot of people are waking up, and it's brilliant now where I think in the end, and if you look at our particular government at the moment and the US government before the recent change, you see that the only way to change things is if people lead it. We can't expect our leaders to save us, because that's just not going to happen.
That was Neil Perry, and you're listening to The Regenerative Journey. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and internationally, and their continuing connection to country, culture, community, land, sea and sky. And we pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging.
G'day, I'm your host Charlie Arnott, an 8th generational Australian regenerative farmer. And in this podcast series, I'll be diving deep and exploring my guests' unique perspectives on the world, so you can apply their experience and knowledge to cultivate your own transition to a more regenerative way of life.
Welcome to The Regenerative Journey with your host, Charlie Arnott.
G'day, super excited to bring you a wonderful interview with Neil Perry today. I've known Neil for a few years now. He signed a book for me some years ago. In the front of it, he said, what was he say? He said, keep the bastards honest, or no, keep at the bastards, I think he wrote. Lovely fellow. We were lucky to have a chat here at Rockpool Bar and Grill in Sydney, and Sydney's CBD. Can't even talk. I haven't even had a drink yet. And we talked about sort of the impact of COVID. We talked about Neil's regenerative journey, which really started early in his life, where his family were sourcing food from nearby, and his father was a butcher, and so really he was getting the good stuff into him from an early time. We had a couple of Patreon questions too from our Patreon members about changing trends in where restaurateurs are sourcing food from, and also about airline food. Asked me about mentoring, latest projects. What is irate about? What is he excited about? And just before we jump into the interview, I just want to let you know and remind you that Hamish Mackay and I will be down in South Australia with all those wonderful crow eaters down there at Barossa, the Barossa Valley, on the 3rd and 4th of May at the Alkena Wine Estate, there with Dan and Amelia and all those wonderful people. Now, just to make a note of that, we aren't just talking about how biodynamics applies to wine and viticulture. It is about horticulture. It's about broadacre. It's about small scale garden. It's however you want to apply biodynamics to your world and your life. So there on the 3rd and 4th of May in the Barossa Valley at the Alkena Wine Estate, and on the 6th and 7th of May, that's later in that same week at McLaren Vale at Gem Tree Wines there with Melissa and Michael, who produce some amazing wines, as does the Alkena Estate. So just to reinforce that, you don't have to be a wine grower. You might want to be a grape eater, but not a wine grower or a winemaker, to come to these courses down there in South Australia. They are open to everyone. So spread the news far and wide. We'd love to see you there. Tickets available on charliearnott.com.au, and I hope everyone enjoys this interview with Neil Perry as much as I do. Neil Perry.
Charlie.
Welcome to your restaurant, Rockpool Bar and Grill. We're sitting up in where are we? We're at one of the private rooms.
One of the private rooms, the Bligh Room, with a nice little view over Bligh Street. That's the name.
It's the name. I'm sure
not too creative, but
well, that was my next question: is where actually what is outside? So you've answered that one, yeah. Neil. I have got you here as a guest on the Regenerative Journey, and I'm most appreciative of your time as well. You're a very busy man, and I want to make sure that you get some value out of this as well as our listeners. And what I do is I want to make sure my guests are in a happy place. And I suspect that we're in a happy place.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're looking at a beautiful Chinese elm out there, overlooking the CBD of Sydney. And can you tell us about, Neil, I guess, what does Rockpool mean to you? What is it? Because I want to try and set the scene.
Well, I mean, for me, it's the brand that I've had in my life for 33 years now, moving on from the fine dining Rockpool to 15 years ago, Rockpool Bar and Grill. in Melbourne, and then 12 years ago, Rockpool Bar and Grill in Sydney, and then 10 years ago, Rockpool Bar and Grill in Perth, as well as a few of my other restaurants. But this, being the namesake or the continuation of Rockpool, which is a really important pillar in my life, and probably the brand that I'm most known for, is something that's really close to my life. And at the moment, love watching the fire like I was this morning and seeing the boys cut all that beautiful beef, and it's incredible.
Are you here? Because being as busy as I think you are, I suspect you are. How much time do you actually spend? I mean, if not on the pans, just sort of in situ in your,
Yeah, well, I'm still a shareholder in the Rockpool Dining Group, but I kind of stepped away. I'd retired for 5 minutes, but yeah. Well, I mean, it was.
Did you do the Johnny
seriously thinking
Farnham?
I was seriously thinking of taking a really nice big break and just focusing on the charity that we do with Rockpool Foundation, Rockpool Dining Group, and Quadrant Hope Delivery, which is just about to restart fantastically. And I was really going to take a big break, but from a day-to-day running, but what I am is a mentor to many of my old team, and I love the restaurants, and I'm here all the time and say hi to the customers and make sure that everybody knows that I'm still around and still incredibly supportive of Rockpool Dining Group and Rockpool Bar and Grill in particular.
I think it's really important that the boss, as it were, the principal, is seen on site, and it's not just like, oh, he's the guy that sort of pops in and yells at us and buggers off for for a couple of days.
Yeah, no, definitely, and I think that whole culture and people working together, it's important that the leadership is part of that.
Neil, I wanted, if I may, drill down into, hence the name of the podcast, The Regenerative Journey. I'm looking to understand, going back in time to, your earlier years, and I guess I'm looking for some points in time potentially, without, putting words in your mouth, there were some sort of either tension events or times when you had some deep reflection on what you were doing and then decided to change. Before we get to those points, just give us a sense of Neil Perry before those points in time. Well, you can go back as far as you want.
Well, I'll go all the way back because the reality of it is that, my father taught me pretty much everything I know about food without me probably realising it at the time. He was a butcher, so we ate great meat, always ate lots of offal. And he was, and my three brothers were butchers as well as my uncle. So it was really rooted in the family. But he was a mad keen fisherman. We lived on Georges River, so everything that we ate that came from the sea, we'd be in Barrel Lakes in summer, we'd be up at Yamba in winter. And they were our holidays. And so I ate fresh seafood we caught, gutted, scaled on the beach or in the lake at Barrel Lakes or Georges River. And we lived on Stewart Street, and we had a small plot of land. We had an aviary, so the chickens laid the eggs, and Dad would kill a chook every now and again. And, that'd be the roast chook, or he'd bring home incredible meat, or it'd be fish that we caught. But we had a really beautiful little vegetable garden. So we grew things, and we, ate squash and zucchinis and tomatoes and eggplant in summer, and dug root vegetables in autumn and winter, and grew potatoes out in spring. And so I didn't realise at the time, but I was completely immersed in seasonality without kind of realising it. And also freshness. And I guess when I started cooking, that really reflected on me that was where I needed to start, with the season, with the quality of the ingredients, with as fresh as I could possibly get. And because I'd actually dug fruit and dug vegetables and picked fruit and scaled fish and cut large pieces of meat with Dad, because he'd bring home a whole rump and we'd slice and put it on the barbecue or whatever it might be. Then I felt like that was somewhere where I really needed to go and have a relationship with suppliers. And when I first started, even before I started cooking actually in the late 70s, 78, 79, probably 78 actually, the first sort of serious cookbook I bought was Great Chefs of France, and it sort of plotted the 12, I think, chefs of France at the time who lived in the provinces, not in Paris. who were 3-star chefs. And, they told the story of each of the chefs and I suppose the endeavour, the amount of energy and the length of time that you had to put into every day, from sourcing the amazing ingredients at the local markets through to prepping it and family meal and cooking for the customers and cleaning down and starting it all again for dinner. So that was a really pivotal read for me. And I think...
So you were sort of age, what did you give a sense
22, 23, something like that. 21 actually. And then around the same time, the great Michel Gerard, who was one of the, along with Bacchus and Trugaro and Sundaram and those guys, they were Chapal, they were all the guys who were cooking, the old cuisine at the time, the late 70s through to the beginning of the 80s, and sort of one by one I sort of got their books and read it, and everything that came through those pages was about quality, about seeking out the best, about building relationships with suppliers. We say know your producer now, but that's sort of where I started. So right back at Barrenjoey House in 1983, when I took over the reins as the chef there, or at the end of 82 actually, I made sure I put on the menu the suppliers that we had relationships with, and that was the first time that I started doing that. And
is that the first time that...
I think someone did it in Australia, really, yeah. We used to have local fishermen bringing 15, 18 kilo jewfish in the back door and beautiful squid and live prawns and stuff that we were using locally, which was fantastic. And bit by bit, as John Sussman and I sort of got involved in Blue Water Grill and then started getting direct off fishermen large volumes of seafood from around Australia, South Australia, Tassie, Victoria, and then he started flying Squid Brothers when I started Rockpool on George down in 1989. And he said to me, hey, I'll start a seafood business if you'll buy off me. So that sort of started a great relationship. And then
who got the better deal?
I don't know, Sussman, what do you say? And then we did things like, Tony Lehman was my brother-in-law at the time, or cousin of my first wife, and he was a farmer, and we got hold of, I'd said to him, I really lament the fact that when I go to France and eat these amazing milk-fed lambs, it's mind-blowing. Just like when you eat an incredible, like first pressed chicken you have, and you go, okay, now I know why I'd pay as much for chicken as I do for beautiful piece of beef, whatever it might be. So, we did Illabo lamb, and then we started working with a whole lot of other producers and suppliers, and now it's amazing the amount of things that you can get here and the relationship you can develop, like here at Bar and Grill with all the fishermen that we work with directly and all the cattle growers that we work with, directly. So it's great because if you've got an open relationship, you can pass comment backwards and forwards, and you're a conduit between the producer and the customer. And I think it's great for the producers because they get to understand, how prized their ingredients are and how well looked after they are by the chef. I mean, we have on the menu, the cornerstone of good cooking is to source the finest ingredients. Richard, who was my chef at Rosetta up until just recently, put it even more simply, about Italian cooking. Good Italian cooking is good shopping. And the reality, that's just a fancy way, or an easy way of saying what I said before, but the reality of it is that, the best dish starts with the best ingredients, and you can't get around that. Not if you want to taste the nature within the product.
We were in Italy a couple of years ago for a couple of months, Neil, and our Angelica, my wife, being Italian, half Italian, I wanted to go back, and that was certainly the message, not just the message, but the impression, and that's what we saw was the most simple food with the finest ingredients, done well and simply and often quickly.
Yes.
Just,
well, that's
was all we need.
Yeah. And I mean, you go to Italy and you walk into one of those vegetable shops, fruit and veg shops there, it blows your mind, the quality of the product. And you sometimes lament that you can't get things like that here on on a sort of scale that you do there. That's just every fruit and veg shop, right? It's like that.
It's normal there, isn't it?
It's normal, yeah. But we're getting better and better at that. And when I think about, in 1982 or 83, if we forgot to order something off our fruit and vegetable supplier, and we ran down to the local fruit and veg shop to get an interesting lettuce or something, I mean, forget it. It was mignonette and iceberg and that was it. Now you've got 20 different types of rocket and you're confused. You name it. Yeah. It is amazing. So we have come a long way and certainly I think small farmers who care have learnt to be able to market the difference in their product and do what you do, which is look after the earth. I mean, it's a pretty simple idea, but if we look after the earth and we look after the sea, pretty much going to look after the planet. But there's a lot of people who don't seem to understand how simple and they go, how do you feed the world? Well, you don't feed it by industrial farming. You feed it by getting the most out of the earth, and as you know, having biodiversity and quality within the earth that you grow the products in, and then they're better for you as well.
Well, as Charlie Massey says, and he quotes it, that 70% of the world is fed from farms 5 acres or less.
Yeah.
And then 80% is 10 acres and less. Yeah. We can actually do this.
Yeah. We don't have to lay the earth bare all the time. We don't have to rape the sea. There's some really interesting things happening, but the great thing about it is with this podcast and obviously with the advent of things like Netflix and so forth that aren't commercial TV, so that you can get things that make statements and don't have to be the most popular, but can be seeked out by people who really care about things. So, there's a lot of really great documentaries on food and the environment and the sea, I just think a lot of people are waking up, and it's brilliant now. Where I think in the end, and if you look at our particular government at the moment and the US government before the recent change, you see that the only way to change things is if people lead it. We can't expect our leaders to save us, because that's just not going to happen.
Now, have you already read my questions? Because you're pretty much answering them all.
No.
Did Gene send you a?
No,
I get a copy of my questions.
No, not at all.
It's a classic. You're making. Well, in some ways, you make my job easy, but harder. Neil, were there points in? So what I'm getting is that normal for you was growing your own food. Fresh meat was coming in through the door. Yeah. Seafood was at hand.
Yeah.
So I guess in some ways your regenerative journey, or a sense of or a connection with your food and its source, was from day one.
And very unusual. If you think back, and I was born in 57. So if you think from there through to the 70s, Sorry?
Really?
Yeah. If you look from
that's what good food does.
If you look from there, exactly, and wine. And if you look from there through to the 70s, a lot of people in Australia weren't eating like that. I mean, we had what we call the New Australians, of course, back in the day, and they were Greek and Italians and a few select Europeans. You've got 1972 and Whitlam comes to power, White Australia policy, Vietnam War over, a lot of Southeast Asian people coming to Australia, Middle Eastern people who bring culture and really interesting things and interesting food stuff. And you see an explosion in biodiversity diversity of the sorts of cuisines and food and the ethnic places that you can eat at in Australia. And in a very short period of time, we've taken on an amazing food journey. And then in the last, 10 years, what's been brilliant is the recognition that we also have some amazing native ingredients that are incredible first Australians are must be part of our story, because that's what makes us unique and interesting. And they're incredible people. And they've been managing, water shortage and fire in this country for 60,000 years. And so you've got an incredibly, multi-layered flavour pot in this country, which is almost unique to anywhere in the world. And there are other multicultural countries, but I think because of the way that we grow and the attitudes that we have, and then, layering our first strains over the top of it and our incredible seafood and our ability to grow from warm climate to cold climate, you just have such an amazing wealth of things to work with. So why wouldn't you be inspired by a Thai ingredient or an English ingredient or a local ingredient or an indigenous ingredient, whatever it might be. So here in Australia, I think we do things very differently because we're part of Asia. We really are. We're so influenced by it. We've travelled to it as young Australians a lot. Many Asian people or of Asian descent call themselves, and they are Australian here, and we've got this kind of rich culture that's interwoven with Asia. And so I think if you look at all the countries around the world that people pick up, Western or white people pick up Asian ingredients and cook with them, very few manage, I think, to make it as comfortable and as authentic as we do here in Australia. I think that's a really unique part of what we do here.
We're spoiled, aren't we? Just with ingredients and with climate and access, and I guess given where the multicultural nature of where we're really open to all sorts of different food. Having said that, as a country boy, going to the Imperial Peking Chinese down at the Rocks.
Oh, back in the day,
that was a treat.
Yeah,
it was like,
mermaid tresses.
That's it, mermaid tresses.
That was one of the specialties.
Lemon chicken.
There. Yeah.
And Mongolian lamb.
Well, they're all the classics. They're still available in the local Chinese and wherever. Sorry?
Is Imperial Peking still around?
No, it's not. No, it wasn't there for a long time, but they just, I think about 3 years ago or 2 years ago, redeveloped the walls. So, but that was there for a long time. And there was an Imperial Peking in Double Bay as well, which no longer exists, sadly.
That's right. It was underneath, just opposite the oak there.
Yeah.
Or somewhere there, wasn't it?
Somewhere around there, just on the moment.
Neil, so were there some moments in your, again, your journey, your development, your career where was it like a food sourcing or just upon reflection, some moments that were pivotal, were turning point, or you learnt a lot from an event or something that, I guess I'm trying to get a sense of, lessons that you've learned that you can pass on to our listeners? Well,
I think it's being true or questioning what's your truth or what's true to you. So, I mean, I remember in 1984, I'd been at Barrenjoey House for a year and a half and been cooking, I'd worked with Stephanie and Damien Pignolet and Gabe Ilson and Jenny Ferguson at Me and You, and who was an amazing cook in King Street. I don't know if you ever remember that restaurant, went there, but it's amazing. And so I kind of worked with all those guys and worked at the Bayswater Brasserie, and then I got a job at Barrenjoey. But I was in Palm Beach and I was essentially cooking, provincial French food, I suppose, with a bit of Italian overtone or whatever it might have been. But I went to France and ate in all these amazing 3-star restaurants and Freddy Girardet's in Switzerland, and sort of 21 days, 18, 16 3-star restaurants. It was incredible, actually. I think I put on about a stone and a half back in those days.
Worth every
10 kilos.
Pound.
Yeah, it was worth every pound. Spent a lot of money. But I came back and thought, wow, that's incredible food, incredible French cooking. But they're cooking it in France, and sort of what am I doing at Barrenjoey House, cooking essentially French food at this amazing location in Sydney. So I'd always loved Asian cooking, Chinese. My father had me very sort of switched into that, and I love it. I've been reading a lot about Moroccan food and playing around with that as well. And so I really kind of thought to myself, why aren't I cooking the food that I love, and also some of the other cultural influences that I see here in Australia, in my country? And so that's when I decided in 84 that I would, start to cook my own food, really, not renditions of dishes that I'd seen in cookbooks or cooked with people or what have you. So that was kind of the starting of the real Neil Perry journey, I suppose, right through Pittwater Grill and then into Rockpool, where we were sort of very creative and doing different things. And then, it was always, Pittwater Grill was an amazing seafood restaurant, as my father was a butcher. It was always in my mind to have a steakhouse. And so when the opportunity arose to create Rockpool Bar and Grill, I kind of, jumped in with hands wide open, and it was a really fantastic, kind of part of my career. And I sort of see now going down to Double Bay and opening this new restaurant where for the first time ever I'm going to own it 100%, and And I kind of see that
it's got a name, yeah? Or is it a bit secret squirrel?
It's a bit of a secret squirrel on that, mate.
I'll tell you off camera.
Yeah, I can tell you off camera. I can't. It's about the end of April.
Yeah, okay. No pressure.
So I see that as the next kind of, defining focus of my career, because I want to really create a kind of world-class neighbourhood restaurant, the sort of place that everybody wants to be and hang out and use for different things, and feels like they should take the family there for a birthday, or should dive in and have a glass of wine and a burger, or just have some oysters and a glass of Chablis, whatever it might be.
Are you looking for more information to assist you on your regenerative journey? We've created an online community of supporters with exclusive access to interview transcripts, live online Q&A sessions with Charlie and his interviewees, as well as the opportunity to be interviewed on the show yourself. If you would like to be part of this community, or would simply like to contribute to the development of the podcast series, please make your way to patreon.com/The Regenerative Journey podcast. We look forward to you becoming a member of the Regenerative Journey community. Let's get back to this week's episode.
Neil, I want to just divert off there for a little bit. I want to sort of go a bit high level. What do you think, what would you say your genius is?
I think probably getting the best out of other people. I've never thought of myself as the world's greatest cook or restaurateur or whatever it might be, but I think I'm really good at actually getting people together, leading them in a direction and getting the best out of them along with myself. So I guess never having the ego where you or where you're insecure about having people that seem to have more talent or are smarter or have a skill that you don't have, but getting the best out of them. And I think that, and probably, moving forward all the time, recognizing that I can't really control anything except for what's within my sphere. So, making sure that I keep all of that under control, and then I'm in a better position to when things are coming at me. I'm in calmer, better, more relaxed, more focused on what we're doing. I've got the troops going forward. We're doing the best we possibly can every day. We're doing better tomorrow. Things come at us, we can deal with it. We're not worried about what other people think. We're not worried about what's going to happen. We love a great review, or we love something that's really fantastic, but that's not what our focus is. Our focus is doing the best that we can, and then when these outside influences happen, then you just have to take it for what it is, good or bad, and then just got to move on and marshal the troops and get the best out of them. So I think actually leading people and getting the best out of them would probably be, I think my strong suit.
It's a bit like, in some ways, farming or regenerative farming, where we try and focus on what we're in control of.
Yeah.
And like the weather, can't do
much. Pray.
Well, that's true. Go to church more. But having said that, though, the being prepared for the rain when it comes.
Yeah.
Just sort of having the ground cover as an example, and making sure, well, I can't make it rain, but when it does rain, I want to make sure I capture as much of that as I can. I've got so many questions, but I'm going to have to cull them. Actually, you have answered quite a few. What are you irate about at the moment? Is there anything that sort of gets up your goat?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that I really disappointed most in is how we started down a great path of reconciliation, and it seemed to have gone off the boil a little bit. I must say that when Morrison jumped out and said after Gladys, and I've been saying it on Instagram for a while, the simple changing of the word one as opposed to free in the National Anthem, when you get up there and listen to the All Blacks, sing the National Anthem, half it's in Maori, and then they do the haka, and then, we are young and free to a country that's got 60,000 years of continual culture. It's a bit rich. I was kind of, it's a bit remiss. I mean, I think we have to rewrite history, right? Because we know enough of it now to be inclusive, and we have to be inclusive to take the next step in the journey. So that gets my goat a bit. And then I think the other thing is really making sure that we focus on the environment. I mean, I know we've had to listen to the science, which has been brilliant, and all of our politicians have said, listen to the science on COVID. And we've got to where we are by listening to the science and by focusing on that. And everyone's done an amazing job in Australia of respecting, each other, the fellow human being. But I do think when we say listen to the science on climate change, and for some reason we're able to ignore that science, just seems to me that if you can stand up there and tell everybody that they've got to go into lockdown for two months because of the science, and then you can say, oh, well, coal could be the answer, gas-led recovery, you're going to wonder what's got to happen to make people realise that climate change is real, and that the reality of it is, I mean, even if the guys who have got the negative view were right, I mean, what's wrong with having a cleaner planet? It would be just like saying, oh, don't clean up your bedroom, kids, or don't fix the house up, or don't, it's, why would you want the seas to be polluted with plastics? Why would you want to pollute the earth, CO2s, and why would you want to chop down the Amazon or burn it? The irresponsibility just seems ridiculous.
I think, Neil, it was actually your Instagram feed where I saw you replayed the National Anthem at the Rugby game.
Yeah.
Which I was blown away. I missed so many games on the television, don't watch much, but that was, thank you for posting that, because I totally would have missed that.
Yeah, well, I was just blown away by it. I mean, the beautiful young girl singing was fabulous, but I think, to the point that we recognise that Australia has such a rich, history and culture, and the more that we push towards that, the more the understanding is that we're all one people here and we've got to get on with it. I think that's for sure for me is in my lifetime, I'll be so proud of seeing a lot of change, if I kick on for a few more years, hopefully, because I think in the next 20 years there's going to be some serious rewriting of or the writing of history. And when you think about it, hopefully the right things being taught in school, and also, hopefully. And it's interesting, actually, because I think we have quite a few young Indigenous kids from the National Indigenous Culinary Institute who've been fantastic cooking with us and working with their native ingredients and going out and seeing some of the picking and harvesting and whatever. And I think a lot of reconciliation can start to happen through food, because it starts to show that we do have great respect and we understand what it is to be Australian and how unique this country is, because it is incredibly unique. So, let's celebrate that.
It's a wonderful, from an Indigenous and a sort of a, Anglo sort of point of view, or, different district point of view, different regions of Australia or the world, food, again, is that central. As I say, when I talk at things, put your hand up if you eat food. Yeah. Not many don't. It's like, it's the thing that is.
And quite a lot
common.
Care about it. I mean, there are a few who could just eat cornflakes every day, but I mean, the reality of is, you frame, it's an important part of framing culture and country. And so for us to bring the uniqueness out that we have in our food is fabulous. But I think, also, importantly, to celebrate the different cultures that we have in Australia. We have incredible ethnic restaurants that we can go to where we can taste beautiful food that represents people who are part of this, the Australian fabric. I mean, we're one people in this planet. It's just crazy that we just have so many arguments about religion, colour, sex, gender, sexuality. It was just so frustrating. Thank God Malcolm managed to get the plebiscite up and going for same-sex marriage. When it was very clear that the overwhelming majority of Australians want everybody to be able to, marry, find love, and be a couple. And, why would you cut out a vast amount of people out of society out of that? But just, we seem to have this way of going to war on each other as humans, which I just flabbergasted at. It's kind of, if you take Islam and Judaism and Christianity, I mean, half the people who don't even realise it's just the one God we're talking about. It's
the same woman.
it's just frightening. But anyway, I mean, hopefully, you'd hope that things can change, but I'm not overly optimistic that we can stop trying to hurt each other.
Let's raise the tone. What are you excited about? Is it something to do with Hope Delivery?
Yeah, really excited about Hope Delivery at the moment.
Might have another one, obviously,
because we've got 5,000 people that we're going to be able to feed a week in about 4 weeks. So we're super excited about that. We know vulnerability in Australia has increased through COVID. It hasn't gone backwards. It hasn't gone forwards, gone backwards. So we know that more people are dropping below the poverty line. We know that more people are struggling, making a decision like, can I afford to eat today, or do I leave my house and become homeless? Or, there's a lot of stuff going on that we know that we can support through Hope Delivery, and that's a wonderful experience. And I know through COVID, looking at the experience of say, Melbourne, where we were in hard lockdown for 4.5 months after we came out of lockdown in Sydney, that my guys really, their mental health was fantastic because they got to come to work anywhere between 4 and 2 days a week, cook food or pack food and actually hand out food riverside to 1,000 people a day. They were such a part of a community. It was such a strong kind of focus for those guys that it really helped them through what a lot of people in Melbourne struggled with, which was the mental health issue that COVID created, outside of the physical issues that we had with the disease itself.
So just for those who don't know, just explain what Hope Delivery is, that giving of...
Yeah, it was really just G basically saying, hey, chef, you've got the ability to do something about this because there's a lot of visa holders and a lot of people who don't have a safety net from the government, and stop talking about it on Instagram and actually do something. And, well, we had a kitchens. All my staff are going, chef, what's going on? Like, anything we can do to help. And interestingly, because Trish and I have been always very community-minded, we had our own foundation, the Rockpool Foundation, which was audited by KPMG for the last 7 years. So when we said to people, you can donate, it's tax deductible, this is what we're hoping to achieve, it was fantastic. Everybody jumped on board. So we raised about $400,000 in about 3 weeks and got about serving 300,000 meals in 9 months.
It's incredible. And I guess the farmers didn't stop growing food.
No, and we were able to support producers, which was fantastic. And we were able to small suppliers who were kind of caught in the middle of restaurants owing them money and them wanting to pay their producers, and we all of a sudden were buying $10,000 a week worth of food. And it worked well for those guys, which was fantastic.
If only we could solve the the current problem of fruit and vegetables not being able to be picked because we just don't have the employees and the backpackers. And
well, Charlie, the interesting thing is, the only thing that concerns me about opening a new restaurant is staff. Now, when you've got X amount of unemployed in Australia, you would suspect that wouldn't be the case. But in hospitality, without all the skills visas that have had to go home because they couldn't survive without a safety net, with the travellers who've all had to go home because, again, they had no safety net, and with diminishing students who used to work 20 hours a week in the restaurant industry or hospitality industry, we're in serious trouble. So the thing that's going to impact the ability for the restaurant industry to come back to full strength is a staff one. So we really need the government to understand that we've got to get the right balance between bringing people in to pick fruit, dig vegetables, do the sorts of things that in agriculture is desperately needed. And as you say, like, I feel sorry for you guys because you had some rain this year and decent rain too. So you're growing. Probably had the best year.
It is.
And you say you have a great year and then you can't fully monetize it, which it seems a tragedy. So we do need to get back to some kind of what does COVID normal look like afterwards, and how do we get people travelling again? And look, I'm very optimistic that with the vaccine and with the way, particularly with the way, looking at the numbers in the UK and America and Israel, where they're rolling out substantial vaccination, the vaccination does seem to be making it more like the flu rather than hospitalisation and potential death, a bad cold and you can get over it, or immunity. And the numbers are dropping quite substantially at the moment. So there's some encouragement. And I was talking to Lyndon Pride, who owns Dante, a bar in New York. He works for me, and I just give him a call from time to time and see how he's going, because it's been pretty dire for those guys for a big chunk of time. And they're back to 35% open, and they're going to actually be a lot more than that by spring inside dining. And he's saying that in America they're saying round about July, which isn't that far off now when you think about it, round about July, they think they'll have herd immunity to the point where, life can return to fairly normal.
So opening, not the numbers restrictions.
Not the number of restrictions. So we're very lucky here in Australia.
Have you got restrictions?
Well, we're at 2 square metres, but that pretty much helps most restaurants, in particular the smaller ones. I felt very sorry for those guys during the 4 square metre rule, which had to happen, of course. And we completely understand why everything was going on, but the other great thing, of course, now is with the vaccine going into quarantine workers, you would hope leakage is zero or almost minimal. And I think for the 50,000 people who have to come back, to put 50,000 vaccines towards them, you should be going to Australia House in London or in New York, to wherever you've got to go to get a vaccination, and then COVID test 2 weeks later, and then come back to Australia. I mean, I think if we do that, and then hopefully everybody who comes in is vaccinated after that, when we start to open bubbles and borders. But I think, considering where I thought we were, May last year, to where we are now.
Big turnaround. Positive. Neil, we have a little, it's getting bigger, group of members, Patreon members, Patreon being a sort of a platform where people can subscribe, and they help we have webinars every month with some of our interviewees, and they get transcripts of the interviews and so on. And we put to them this morning, was it last minute, any questions that they might have for Neil Perry. And 2 popped up. Yep. 2 that I was happy to share. One relates to are you seeing a shift away from restaurateurs sourcing food from overseas, and is there a shift more towards sourcing good organic or regeneratively grown produce from Australia? And so, and if so, why do you think that trend is? Is that a customer-led trend? Is it restaurateurs going, actually, we got it all here anyway? What's the?
Yeah, look, I think it's definitely happening. It's certainly happening in the best restaurants. We really push to get a greatest, because we produce great Australian olive oils now, and great vinegars and things that we might have bought from overseas, and people are growing lentils now and farro and all the sorts of things we might have bought from Italy and different places, and we're wanting to mill Australian flours for our pastas and our breads and things, and we're focusing on Australian wine. Sure, we're going to be selling imported wines, but we're really focusing, and I had a big campaign through my Instagram about Drink Australian and support the Australian industry, because it's been through fire and it went through a fire, flood, and then obviously COVID and now China and so forth. So all of these industries within Australia, I think the pandemic made us realise that we have a certain responsibility to support our own country and our own producers, and very interestingly, I think manufacturing and pharmaceuticals and IT and all the sorts of things that we generally have in spades. I mean, most of the really great ideas, in universities and different things researchers end up going overseas to
get the money.
The money to formalise the idea they had in Australia. And I think what COVID's made possible is, the government funding and the different fundings that are available is to recognise that we have this wonderful treasure here in this country of intellect, and we want to hold on to it, and we want to hold on to manufacturing, and we want to be able to make face masks here. And great to see the fact that we'll be making our own vaccines and so forth, and importantly a focus towards Australian wine and Australian producers and making sure that we're using Australian salt and all the sorts of things that again help the producers thrive and get through all the various things that they have to get through, because you're right, you can't dial the weather in and out, and I often wonder why anyone would be a farmer, but
that was my other question. I was going to say, when are you going to buy a farm?
Yeah, no, mate, no. Matt, leave that to Matt Moran. He keeps all those little piggies are running around, and all he sees is money.
Actually, I texted him this afternoon and I said, have you got any questions for Neil? I don't think he got back to me.
He's busy, mate, busy.
He is a busy bloke. I'm looking at the time too, Neil. You're a busy bloke.
No drama.
Couple of basic ones. I asked Matt this the other day. What's cooking with oil? What's the best oil to cook with?
Well, I just cook usually either if I'm cooking Asian food, I'll cook with vegetable oil or peanut oil. And if I'm cooking Western food, I'll pretty much always cook with olive oil.
You will?
And finish with extra virgin olive oil. So I just love the flavour of it. People will I'll often cook a sauce or something with extra virgin olive oil, and people say, oh, isn't that a bit wasteful? I honestly believe everything tastes better in the end. You know, it's sort of like if you use a decent glass of wine, I mean, you don't have to go crazy, but if you use a decent glass of wine and reduce it down to make a red wine sauce, if the wine tastes great to start with, the sauce pretty much tastes great. If you use a terrible cooking wine, nothing's going to save it, right? So, yeah. That's
a bit of a rule of thumb, isn't it? If you're going to serve wine at dinner, or the dish requires wine, it's appropriate that goes in the dish, goes on the table.
That's it, absolutely.
Same thing. One last question. Tell me about copper pots, because my wife's nuts for them.
Yeah, I love them.
And I want to know, because they're as dear as poison.
Yeah.
But I want to know, are they worth are they just the best to cook on?
Oh, they're beautiful to cook on. So obviously they're rendered useless by induction if you're using induction, but they're really beautiful to cook with. So I used to have a lot of them. So when I was going to France from 1984, and pretty much from 1984 to 1986, I probably went every year to France, sometimes a couple of times, and I ate in all the brilliant restaurants. I was lucky enough to eat at Robichon in 84 and in 96 when he closed. But I would go to what would be the chef's warehouse in Marmont in Paris, and I'd always buy 2 or 3 pans and bring them back. So I had a massive collection down at Rockpool where I would have had 20 saute pans of all different sizes and all copper souffle pans and beautiful little sauce boats and all that sort of thing. But to cook out of, the evenness of the heat is absolutely fantastic. So to do one of the classic French dishes like a saute of chicken, for instance, you just can't beat it.
So when my wife turns up and says, I've just spent $300 on a little copper pot, I won't crack the shit.
It does hurt, doesn't it?
But I will appreciate what comes out of it.
That's amazing.
New projects now?
Yeah, new projects, restaurant down in Double Bay, a couple of other things over time down there. Sinking our teeth back into Qantas as we get back more domestic flying now with the borders down, and we're viewing first hub flying, I would say, bubble flying, and then a return, hopefully next year to.
What's bubble flying?
Well, I think New Zealand will open up first.
Singapore's
already a green zone that way, but not back. So Thailand seems to be under control. Vietnam, Taipei, Hong Kong to a certain extent. Getting better and better. China's in pretty good shape. So we'll see that, and then looks like the States might come good slightly quicker than Europe and then Europe. So, over a period of time we'll see that. So Qantas is on the boil, hope delivery. Yeah, we want to cement that and make sure that that's on the radar forever and a day. My new cookbook comes out in October, so cool. I just finished shooting. We're kind of doing pages soon. We're doing that last tidy up of the edit, which has been not ongoing, and it'll be good to get that out of my life. And then we start, then we start flogging it, of course. So that'll be out in October, and we're super excited.
Talking about airlines, Neil, we had a question about airline food.
Yeah,
can we go there?
Sure.
And it's a quick one. Why can't we have real food on flights instead of the shitstorm of chemicals?
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, when we're in full flight at Qantas, I think our premium product
I think they're probably talking about
fantastic. But economy,
steerage.
can be difficult, and it's really all about costs. I think the economy product in Qantas is pretty good internationally. Of course, domestic. it's interesting as Australians, we have a view of what we should get on planes, but, you jump on a flight in Europe or in America and it's like jumping on a bus. I mean, you get nothing. So I would say some of our domestic flying is some of the best, stuff in the world, really, because we do get things, and I think the majority of our terminals are something to be proud of, and I think we take for granted infrastructure in this country. We have some, when you think about the size of Australia, which is roughly the same size as the United States of America, without all the bits, and you think about 300 million odd people, and then you think about our little 25 million in this vast country. The quality of the flying and the quality of the infrastructure and the quality of our roads, and I often travel and I think America's kind of falling apart. I love America, but you go for a drive on some of the infrastructure, the bridges and the roads, you kind of think, whoa, gee, they haven't been fixed since Roosevelt put them in.
Well, I mean, we're lucky, the food and the infrastructure. And just talking about the terminals, I was blown away a couple of years ago walking into, must have been the Qantas thing in Sydney there, Wolfgang Puck restaurant there. Because years ago, Ange and I went to, in LA, one of his restaurants there, and was horrified when we said, have you got any grass-fed? And he goes, no, sir, but we've got this big tray of grain-fed stuff.
That would have been cut or one of those.
It was. It was cut. Yeah, well done. We stole a spoon.
Oh, really? Well, you can't tell that. It's okay. You've probably got a few towels from all the hotels, is that right?
I haven't got any Rockpool spoons yet, though, not yet. What else, Neil? Oh, a couple more, just very quick ones. If there was a message, a sign, if there was a message or a phrase or a quote or a question you could put on a billboard just next to the Harbour Bridge there, what would it be that everyone could see?
I think I'd say as Australians we are all one. I think I'd really love to see a small country like this be able to lead the world on climate change, be able to lead the world on cultural diversity, and most importantly on showing how well we can love each other and be one voice and one opinion. I mean, having many different opinions, but the reality is really understand the fact that we're all the same, but we are different, and celebrate those differences. You don't have to be frightened of difference. You don't have to be frightened of religion or gender or sexuality or colour or we really are underneath. We're all one people, and I would think that. Just like I'd love for us to lead the world in climate change rather than say, we can't make an impact. I think we could lead the world on so many things because we are a small, beautiful country that has so many positive things about it. When you think about all the countries in the world that you could be born into, I can't think of one that I'd rather be than here in Australia.
So how would you say that we are the same? Is that it?
Yeah, we are the same. We are one. It's just, it's colour is skin deep. I mean, all those sorts of things are not cliches. It's a reality.
Totally.
We need to understand our diversities and our differences and get along, and there's really no reason why we have to be frightened of each other.
Neil, I don't think anyone's going to be frightened of you after that. And can I just thank you so much for your time, not just your time now in the last 48 minutes, but your time that you put into creating wonderful cookbooks, the Hope Delivery Initiative, the inspiration you give, not just your people who eat your food, but the people you've been mentoring over many, many years, because you're really, I am pumping up your tyres, I know, but I want to because I think it's absolutely, I'd like to because, you're leading the way in so many different areas in the food industry in Australia, and to get through COVID and to be still, mentoring and serving up good food and helping the less fortunate people as well, which is not a lot of people do that. Maybe they should do more of, but you didn't have to do that, no? Well, thank you. I mean, we always feel community comes first. I mean, they've been so fantastic to us and myself, and I just feel that, you've got to give back. Well, thank you for giving today, Neil. We will be very excited to put this out on the airwaves on the regenerative journey. And just one quick one, I'll probably mention it in the intro. We have the aircon in the back.
Yeah, right.
So if it's a bit hard to hear, you'll hit Reece, my production man. He'll sort something.
He'll tidy it up. But we couldn't turn the whole restaurant off just for the.
Come on, you're the boss.
Not with a wood fire grill going.
Neil, thank you again, and
Pleasure, Charlie.
Look forward to seeing you and
Thanks, mate.
and the release of the book. And,
book
and the opening of the restaurant.
You bet. See
Beautiful.
you soon, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Pleasure.
Well, there you go. Neil Perry, delightful chat there with him at Rockpool. Very generous with his time and very generous in his mentoring of many other chefs that I know he's quite the figurehead in the industry, and rightfully so, because he has been such an inspiration and a cornerstone of Australian cuisine for many years now. Talking about cornerstone, that's a good segue, isn't it? Next week's interview is with Aaron McKenzie. He is he's the creator of Origins of Energy. He owns a sort of a small gym. That's just one of the many things he does. He's all about health, fitness and well-being, spiritual and physical. And I had a really good yarn with him in his studio arrangement, gym arrangement. And I say cornerstone because he's built. He's into fitness and health. And he's a delightful bloke, and he's he's not just a fitness guy. He just goes, I'm just going to, work out and tell people how they might work out. He's all about individual health and well-being, and also the connection of food with their health and where that food's come from. So really good yarn with Aaron McKenzie, and I hope you're looking forward to that one as much as I am next week.
This podcast is produced by Rhys Jones at Jaeger Media. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to subscribe, share, rate and review. For more episode information, please head over to www.charliearnott.com.au.